The title of my talk is I'll Burn That Bridge When I Get There. I'm going to take you through my chain of thoughts real quick in terms of the title. It's one of my friend's favorite sayings, and I just fell in love with this. Her other favorite saying is, we shouldn't make a habit out of this, and she usually says that after we've visited a wine farm and just stayed there for too long. So I was very enthusiastic in terms of using this title, but then when it actually got to constructing the talk, I was like, damn, how am I going to bring everything that I want to talk about together, and how am I going to relate it back to bridges and fire? So where a bridge is linear, this talk isn't, so that's definitely not going to be the metaphor. I'm just preparing you in advance. I'm going to be looking at boundaries and why some people have difficulty setting boundaries, where that stems from, and then I'm going to take it to next year, where setting boundaries in the workplace is going to be something we all are going to be faced with. So there you go. I'll burn that bridge when I get there. First things first, as Eve's now finally nailed my name is Nane, and I suffer from anxiety. I have every possible meme you can get regarding anxiety. So this was the most difficult slide to make because I honestly didn't know which one to use. Some of the other things I considered was my neck, my back, my anxiety attack. But we stuck with this one for now. Okay, so what's the deal? I'm so grateful for John yesterday that tackled anxiety, because he really highlighted something for me, and that's the fact that it doesn't present in everyone in the same way, and we all deal with it differently. So I've been struggling with anxiety for a very young age, and as I'm standing here, I'm solely sponsored by my medical aid and the 5 pills I drink a day. And it took me a long while to actually owe up to it, to address it, but also to be able to talk about it and how it manifests in my life. Because as we know, anxiety is way more than just a label. There's actually a whole spectrum of things that's attached to it. And while I may experience it in one way and another person in another, it's really important that we start to think of mental health as a spectrum rather than just a definite diagnosis. Cool. So where am I going with this? Something that I asked myself a few times. Anxiety is a lot like having a braai, almost, and inviting one person, and before you know it, it turns into a Constantia rage. Your first guest is anxiety. It's the one that's actually been invited. So they rock up early, they bring a 6-pack Castle Light, and then they casually inform you that they'll be bringing a friend along. And then after a while, fawning joins, also known as people-pleasing. Fawning rocks up and they announce that their flatmate might also be joining a bit later, and then boom, difficulty setting boundaries rock up, and they drift into your parking space, and the first thing they ask you is, listen, can I get the aux? I dabble a bit in house, and then it's a complete rager. You have a bunch of people there, someone brought a funnel, a guy sitting in the corner playing Wonderwall on a guitar, and you're just frantically running around putting coasters and ashtrays around everywhere. So it's horrible. And then obviously there's one person to rock up just before curfew. And that is the hot ginger that difficulties setting boundaries met and hooked up with in Village. She's called burnout. So at the end of the day, your house party looks something like this. There's you in the air like the rock star that you are. You have anxiety right there in the front. Fawning is obviously just happy to be there. Right in the middle will be difficulty setting boundaries because, well, obviously. And then in the corner is burnout, just being a smoke show, waiting to chat to the guy that drove the Jeep. And that's where we're at. So why did I decide to address my house party for the first time a few months ago? It's because of this woman. When Adele announced her new CD, she made a public threat and we took it too lightly. Honestly, she said, I'm coming back and I'm taking victims. Not only did she dominate my Spotify Wrapped this year, but she also gave me a big breakthrough in terms of how I manage my anxiety and my mental health. So for the first time, she openly spoke about her own struggles with anxiety. And although she's not the first person in the entertainment industry to do so, she actually highlighted and placed a lot of emphasis on the ways she deals with her anxiety. For example, by exercising 3 times a day. And let's not beat around the bush, I'm no athlete. In 2012, I decided to compete in the 1,500 long distance meter or race, and I was overlapped twice. The person ringing the bell for each round was so confused, I ended up running a whole lap less than everyone else. But it's fine, it's fine. And she called us out. She called us out hard. She asked me, not personally, unfortunately, she didn't phone and say hello, but my jokes are terrible, guys. But she made me question if I'm actually, in fact, dealing with my anxiety and all the house guests that comes with them in a healthy way. And she also told me it's okay to struggle with it and it's okay to talk about it publicly. I'm not sure if Adele struggles with all the aspects of anxiety like I do. For example, having random bursts of sadness. In my case, seeing old people eating soft serve just triggers me in a way that I can't explain. It's been a week, guys. But the fact that she called me out to get myself together really, really made me think about how next year is going to look if I don't get these damn guests out of my house. So, how do we get to setting boundaries? Work-related burnout has become a novelty. And I know this is a very strong statement to make, but in applying for jobs and looking at the job descriptions and the fact that nearly all of them require 2 years of work experience, I realized that there's really a lot riding on next year. I've been accepted into a graduate program, and I know that I face, thank you. Weird flex, but okay. And I know that I'm going to be faced with the challenge of managing not only my time, but what I actually can give. And it's interesting, when you enter in a junior position, not only is there this massive expectation of you, but you're going to really strive and do the best you can because work is scarce. And another way that I think work-related burnout has become a novelty is obviously in social movements, hashtag girl boss, hashtag small business owner. Workaholic is one of those words that you kind of use in an interview when they ask you about your negative qualities. You're like, oh, I'm such a workaholic. I struggle to pull myself away from the office. Anyway, so that brings me to I'll burn that bridge when I get there. How to be proactive in setting boundaries at work and staying true to the title of my talk. I decided to run with the fire metaphor, so I'm going to give you 5 tips for avoiding a fire drill. Once again, I'm no expert, and I think a big reason for me deciding to use this as my topic is to kind of preach myself as well. And I know I'm being held more accountable since I've actually dedicated 10 minutes of my time and yours to it. So let's start. First things first, this is the type of chaos we want to try and avoid. And that's why we start by getting certified. Know the requirements of your role. Go and ask what the KPIs are, how you're going to be measured, what is actually expected, and keep a paper trail. Always keep a paper trail, whether that be emails, even if it's just notes that you made during a meeting. Keep that in your back pocket, always. And then have regular conversations with those measuring your work. Ask them where you can improve. People love being involved. People love being asked their opinion. So you're also doing a bit of schmoozing there. Then secondly, install your fire alarms. I think the issue with boundaries are that we often set them too late. So be proactive about that. Be upfront about your capabilities, your expectations, and what's non-negotiable. And also, don't share your grapes with everyone. I know that's a difficult thing when you have a lot on your heart and you have a lot to say about management, but pick a work wife and stick to them. There's a few people in this class that's been living in holy matrimony this year. They've always been paired up, been together. That's what you need next year as well. Then speak like a marshal. Like we've referred a few times to how Afrikaans I actually am. And the two most used phrases growing up in my house was firstly, wat gaan die mense sê? So what are the people going to say? Which is highly ironic considering that my mother allowed me to leave the house in orange Crocs for the majority of my childhood. And then the second one was sê dankie vir die tannie. But I've come to realize that even tannies don't always deserve a donkey. And that's why I've come up with a few phrases to use when you have to say, nee dankie tannie. First, can you please explain your reasoning on this? A lot of times, a person actually hears the fault in their own argument when asked to repeat it slowly and out loud. So this is a great technique to use. Then I'm intrigued by what you're saying, though I'm not sure how it would work. Once again, ask them to elaborate on the ideas, really explaining the intricacies and the stuff you're worrying about. I want to do my best work, and I won't be able to do so right now. I gave you the impression that I tolerate this type of treatment, but I will not be making an exception for you. Another mic drop, and then obviously my favorite, regards. Number 4, have a performance review. It's not easy to set boundaries, but it's not easy to keep them once you've set them. So make yourself some mirror memos, and these are not the memos, you is kind, you is smart, you is important, but rather some things to remind you why it is important to set boundaries. First, remember, no is a complete sentence. It's not your job to manage someone's reactions to your boundaries. The only people getting upset by you setting boundaries are the ones that benefited from you not having ones. And then, you are not required to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. Thank you, Oprah, obviously. And then lastly, give yourself a badge of honor. It's really difficult to step in a junior position and to advocate for yourself. And in the end of the day, you need to decide, are you going to be this guy or this guy? Essentially, I think the decision is quite simple. And life really doesn't get easier, but you get better. I will leave you with the great words of our class president of 2021. Go take the industry by storm, you beautiful humans.